Okay, we're live, finally. Okay, so my presentation is on easy WebSocket and Rails and entire screen. I don't think people are gonna want to see me anyway. Okay, easy WebSocket and Rails. That's the presentation I wanted to give tonight. I have been using WebSockets without knowing it in Rails for, I don't know, probably a little over 6 months. And it's just been like slowly creeping across our main products to where it's just a tool we use everywhere. And it's really easy to use. And so easy, I thought I might share it with the group. Okay, who am I? Everyone knows who I am. Darren Coffin. I'm on Twitter, GitHub, and email. Just so you know what I like, just to kind of explain my intentions tonight. I like hands-on presentations, demo things used in production, for an actual practice versus slide ideas that haven't been vetted, you know, like in production and theory. So tonight I'm going to be showing quite a bit of code. It's just going to be a live demo that I've gone through a few times. We're going to go to a real Rails application, even though it's got nothing in it, and we're going to implement some features in it. I'd like to start with the chat feature. So we're going to actually have a live chat in a Rails app, and then if we have time, we might do a couple other things just to show the possibilities. Okay. Who here has used or heard of Pusher? Okay. It's a technology that I kind of use. I actually use an open source implementation of the protocol, but I think it started for Rails, but it's a technology that makes WebSockets really easy. So we're going to be doing that tonight. But just so you know that I'm just showing you one way, and I'm going to kind of give a more generic look at ways of using them. So if you don't want to use Pusher, if you want to use something with Node, or I don't know, there's lots of ways of doing this. But it's kind of like once your eyes are open to the possibilities, then it's a lot easier to do it. So I could not get DeckSet to show the images, even though I tried for about 20 minutes. So what I'm going to do is show you pictures here. So here's a common Rails application setup, or any web application setup. You have a browser, and the browser makes a request to your Rails application. And in response, your Rails application will send something back. Right? Everyone knows this. It's really simple. We do it everywhere. But then once that request has been passed to the browser, then there's no more communication. The user might be still sitting on your website, but as far as your server knows, there's no way to get to that browser. If there's some information you want to pass back, you have to wait for the browser to make another request. It's a very one-sided relationship where the browser is always the one that's initiating the communication. Okay. What I'm going to show tonight is an alternative where, or let's say a supplement to this. So this relationship is going to stay the same, where a browser will send a request and response. But what we're going to do in our Rails application is open up a channel to allow communication the other way. So if for some reason the Rails application wants to send something back to the browser and initiate the call, then the Rails app can send a message over this channel. That's one big benefit. There's another benefit that I'll also demonstrate, in that this channel can be used to know if the user's still there. So you know the common Google Analytic, you know, of how long has someone been on your site, been on this page. They don't really know unless they go to another page. Because otherwise, if they just hit your page, there's no timer, you know, there's nothing being sent back to your site. Using WebSockets, we can actually know the second they close the browser or go to a different site. So any questions so far? If anybody has any questions or throws anything out, definitely feel free to do this. Who here has used these? You've put either Pusher or WebSockets? Yeah.
What's the actual response time when you close the browser? Is that based on a timeout of some sort, or do you actually know?
It's milliseconds. There's no polling. There's no delay. I'm not fast enough to time it, or I've never bothered. I don't know how I would time it, but in my experiments with our projects at work, like you close the browser, it's immediate.
Okay, so the browser is
no. Well, I don't know how the browser does it, but it does it. I believe. And don't quote me. And by the way, I am no expert in WebSocket technology. I've only used it in quite a few projects, so you're going to kind of get the more like the practical side. I can't stand up here and tell you how it works exactly. But if I understand, like let's say somebody just quits the process, right? So the browser's not even gracefully exiting. The browser's killed instantly. I believe that will still close it, and we should find out tonight. That might be something neat to find out. So we're going to do that. And let's see, I think there's one more here. Oh, I just wanted to point this out, that when that request and response have gone through, this channel is still up. This is a channel that, like, information is, the Rails application is going to be sending commands and, messages across here. The browser's not, we're not going to actually use this channel to send messages from the browser, but just know there is communication from the browser. The libraries that are managing this, they're making sure that this thing stays open. So this as far as we're concerned is either way just know they're there or way for Rails to send a message that way. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's start here. I'm going to call this KC Ruby demo. What I'm going to do here is set up a server that we're going to use to host let's say the Pusher technology. I'm using a project. I have been using a project called Poxa. It's written in Elixir, and it implements the Pusher spec, I guess. If you want the full-fledged, where you get service and they make sure everything's up and all that, you can use this company's product, and this is probably the most professional way to do this. I've been hosting it myself though, just because I think my needs aren't quite up to this, and we have a pretty good DevOps team that can keep everything running. So let me go and set up a DigitalOcean server. I'm sorry, my mouse is sometimes funny when it's hooked to an HDMI cable for some reason. For the applications, I'm going to boot up a Docker server. Add my SSH key, and this won't take very long. Who here was here for the Docker talk? A few people. So Docker is a way to, and I'm going to probably botch this, even though it's only been a few months since I gave the presentation, but it's a way to quickly put up services to consolidate, or let's say standardize how you host certain applications. I have a Docker image of Poxa up on the docker.com website. What that means is, and once it's done, I'll show you, but I can start up a new instance of Poxa running on a server with Docker in just a matter of a minute or two. While that's up, I wanted to, just so you know, I wanted to give this talk where everything I did was from scratch, even including like building the Rails application. After going through the demo a few times, I realized that wasn't very practical. So what I have is a simple Rails application that has just 2 controllers in it. A login controller where I'm kind of faking a login. I just kind of want to demonstrate where there's a login page, and then if you enter your email, it'll post it. It'll add it to section and redirect you to the home site. And then the home site just has a page in it. So Well, that's still open, but that's still doing something. I'll show you the Rails application. Okay. Okay. That's the login. It's just a fake login just for us to kind of demonstrate this process. So, and I've got just a simple Twitter Bootstrap image up here. Let's see if the server's going yet. It is. Sorry, I got the same IP address I had before. I think this will make more sense when you see it up and running. So let me go and get it going. Docker run Darren Coughlin Paxa. This is downloading a server image with Ubuntu, Elixir, Erlang, Elixir, and Paxa all set up and ready to run this application. So while this is working, it won't take too long. Let me talk about what I'd like to set up as a demo. I'd like to implement a live chat into this page, where on the left, I want to show the users that are on the site, and then on the right, I want to show the chat messages. And even though this is a Rails application, I want it to be live and instantaneous. So if somebody posts a message, it'll appear in the chat. If somebody logs in, it'll appear on the left. If they close the browser, log out. It'll kind of look like a little bit like IRC. Give this another minute. Any questions so far? No, I'm just kind of running here. Okay, actually that's it. It's up and running. I forgot to run it with the port, so let me run it with opening port 8080. No, I think it's I just put that in the wrong spot. Okay. So that server I set up, hello. Let me go ahead and go to this IP address. We have Pox up and running. Now, by default, I just have some really simple credentials that I can use here. And you might be wondering what in heck this is. Yeah, this is, so when I showed you that the Rails application is communicating to the browser, I kind of cheated there. It's actually communicating with this service. So this is a service separate from my Rails application. My Rails application will post, like if I want to communicate to the browser, I'll post it to here, and then it'll post it to the browser. So this is kind of a thing that's right in the middle between the Rails application and the browser. So you might think like, how do we, first thing first is like, how do we point our Rails application at this service just to get this thing up and running? And let me do that. Again, just in the interest of time, because I'm trying to speed through a complex topic pretty quickly, I'm going to use a gem that I created some time ago. This is a slightly different version of something we've been using in production for a while. I called it Paxa Assist because it lets me use, it helps me use Paxa in applications. Let me use these. Okay, there's the gem. I need to add a JavaScript file to my layout page. Let me go into that here. I'm going to call this. Doesn't even matter. What I've added here is a link to this pusher min.js file, which doesn't exist. So let's make it exist. Don't worry about these details. What is it? Toxa controller. Anybody else here with Rails 4 applications keep forgetting that you have to add the gems manually now? Just me. Just me. I have to restart. They just activated in Rails 3. Have you always added them to config application? I found that I have to add the gems that I use up here now. And we converted a full application from Rails 3 to Rails 4, and that was one of the biggest things that busted it. Okay, maybe I'm doing something wrong then. But oh, maybe it's the problem I'm causing. Yeah, so what I'm doing here is I have to, in a few specific points, like in the routes and in the setting up the Paxa controller, I have to set this Rails app to handle all these things I've talked about. Perfect. So this gem has added 2 routes to my application. The JavaScript file that I need, and it's added the pusher off, which we'll get into. All right. You might be wondering what this is. So Pusher released, the company that I showed earlier, they released a JavaScript file that you can use to integrate with their service. Their servers are hard-coded in all this minified stuff. So what my gem also does is it makes those into values you can switch out, and then point at a different server. So I'm going to point it at Paxa. So do that with an initializer. That IP address here. Start the server. This is what I was talking about. It's hard to see, but like that IP address is now, for my server, is now being hit this site. No errors, so we're good so far. So let's finally see Paxa or even Pusher work. Next. When the document's ready, I'm going to run just a little bit of JavaScript. Pusher, subscribe to channel. Subscribe to. Thank you. We call this chat. And a message, it's going to say, this is the type of message I'm going to listen for. New chat, I don't know, it doesn't matter. A function to call here. So anytime a message is sent from the server to the browser and it's on the chat channel and it's the type of the message is a new chat, it's going to run this function. And in this case, all I'm going to do is just output the whatever data I received to the console. Make sense so far? Okay. So the gem has a pusher namespace in there. Let me make sure I get this right. Put a note. I think I called it new chat. All right, kind of hard to see, but there it is. If I can open these two side by side. Hello, world. See that? So again, sorry to put a stopwatch to that. But you can see I'm able to pass messages from my Rails application to the browser. Any questions so far on that? I know that seems like a painful setup. Trust me, it's harder the first time you do it. I've done it a few times, and that's why I ended up making that gem. But with just a few tweaks and a few little bit of configuration, I'm able to now chat the other way. So now you can think like, this is how you'd be able to implement a chat feature. If you wanted to, if let's say somebody posted a new message, they type something in, hit post or submit, that call goes to the server, that adds like a database object, that's to record the chat message, but then it can send the chat message right to the server, so you get a real-time response. Cool so far? Okay. So there's one more cool little bit that I'd like to show, and that's a presence channel. The next big one is reports, and I actually have some pictures of this, or at least some diagrams of it. Who here has ever written an action that returns a CSV report? Right, most of us. So this is usually how it goes. This is how it starts. You have a report, CSV, URL. The Rails app takes like 4 seconds. It'll sit there, churn 4 seconds, and then it'll spit out a report CSV file, right? That's how it always starts. And then about 4 months later, you kind of look at it and you realize, oh, it's taking 40 seconds now because our database is filled up with data. But no big deal. Our page timeout is 50 seconds. It's fine. Nobody's complaining, right? And then now it's 400 seconds. You get a page timeout. The report's busted. I could tell you, and I'll just tell you briefly, that I was involved in a rescue project where a client or a vendor Rails shop built a website for a company I was working for, and they filled it with data. It was like the sweepstakes thing. So these mailers went out, and they were all supposed to hit URLs in the mailers, and it would take them to the site and do all this stuff. The site was busted. Like people would go back to the URL on it, and the thing wouldn't work. But nobody knew about it because there was so much data that when the vendor logged in to run the report to see what's going on, it would time out. So they'd have to request the vendor, say, can you run the report? So they have to log into the server, run it in the background. They do it maybe once a week, and then it was like 2 or 3 weeks had passed before anybody had figured out that nobody had responded. There was no response. So that's when they knew something was wrong. It's just, I know this sounds like silly, but I've just seen this. I've written reports that time out. It's a big deal. It's not a minor thing. So what we do now is it's a different approach to this. If somebody requests a report from us, from one of our products, we take that request for report and we say, thank you, we will do it. We immediately respond, hardly any time, and say, we'll give it to you later. But then we also open up a WebSocket to that page. And we initiate a sidekick job. I'm putting active job up there for whatever you use. This thing might take 400 seconds. It might take 4, whatever. We don't care because this might take forever, but when it's finally done, it'll report done. And we pass a message back to the browser and say, hey, your report's done, and here's your URL to download. Right, so yeah, if they stay on that page, yeah, it'll show up. If they come back to the page later, it'll show up. So you have to put a little bit of architecture. It's like you kind of have to queue up reports that they can download later. But this is a nice way to resolve a problem that I've seen in practically every Rails application has reported. Plus, the funny thing is your report might take 40 seconds. The client's going to think your report's running really fast if you're not just reporting a done message, but if you're popping out a status. So let's say you're looping through like 30 days of records, you're going day by day and running something. After every day, you can just pop a little message back saying, I'm 1 of 30, 2 of 30, 3 of 30. And then on the browser, they're going to see not just that the report's not done yet, they can actually see a running progress bar, incrementing. And that's a much more cool way to do it. We have a lot of, so I don't want to say it's just chat, but we have a system where people can submit text messages or make phone calls, or there's lots of ways of getting stuff in, and we want our users to be able to respond immediately to incoming information from students or users. So there's lots of different ways of popping messages on our sites. Things we couldn't do before we had this website. I don't know if that's one. I guess reporting is one big example. I think there's lots of probably different ways to use this. Can anybody else think of a problem where the request response just doesn't fit what you're trying to do?
Something of like a dashboard where you just sit there and see things that, watch
Yeah.
the web page where things are happening and it's reported.
Mhm.
It's like a log file, feeling the log file for the business people.
Yeah. That would be a good way to do it. It's like anytime that you're using polling, because it's the only option you really have, that would be a case to think about using this.
What's the size of these messages?
I don't know. We don't actually send that much data through it. So
Could you just send the CSV file?
possibly. I've never tested it. I probably wouldn't. What we do is we actually upload the file to S3 and we let the report get streamed off S3. So I don't, like we're a couple stages away from serving up the file in it. Yeah, what we tend to do is it makes it simpler for us. So let's say that there's a new chat message that comes through, right? So what I showed is how you can pass the actual message on the actual chat message to the browser. What if, well, if you've got a chat feature anyway that maybe polls, you probably have a JavaScript method somewhere that will query the server for the chats, and it'll populate your chat box, right? So what we tend to do in a lot of cases is we pass no data over the message. We just pass the message saying, hey, there's a new chat. And then we let the browser query the server again, pull it back down. The reason we do that is it's just for consistency. Like let's say that somebody quickly sends 2 texts or 2 messages. You know how you might have a race condition where these 2 things are coming in and it's kind of almost random which one's going to get in first. And then it may be that the pusher got like message A through first and then B first, but on the server, when they were saved, actually B was first, A was first. So if you refresh your page, you'll get a different order. Like we just kind of wanted to avoid that, so we tend to use a lot of just asking the server for the data we pull for when we load the page anyway. So we also don't have jobs like two different ways of populating a text box or something. So that's shown. Let's go over something that I love about this. It's the presence channels. Let's put that one aside for now. Subscribe to presence channel. Presence. And don't quote me on this, but I think you have to put presence as a prefix. I'm going to do the same thing. Now, this is something in my library. I said on all. Let's say somebody logs into the server, right? It'll actually send a message, calling this function, but it actually sends a message saying member added. And then if a member is deleted, like if somebody logs out of the browser, it'll send a different method call. So I might want to have a function that runs on all of them. So that's why I have that there. So anyway, so there's the presence channel. And let's go ahead and run it. And I'm not typing JavaScript well. Kind of a CopyScript guy. Let's get this right. Presence online. No. Let me. Okay. Let me pull up the graphic I wrote for this. It's in here. Isn't this? Okay. Presence channels work a little differently. So the channel gets open to the Rails application. The Rails application may report back and say this is private only. And I think presence channels should be private. So think of it this way. I want to know who's logged into the server. Like I want to have a text box that that lists all the users that are currently online. How do I know from the browser side who anybody is? Presence channels offer a way to get around this by whenever you open up the channel, the service is going to say it's private only, and that's going to tell the browser to make another web call to some sort of auth URL. In that case, in here, it tried to make that call to localhost 2000/pusher/auth. And since I haven't set that part of the application up yet, it just returns that this user is not logged in. They don't have rights to do anything, so it doesn't work. So let me fix that. Here we go. Going back to here. I'm going to provide the gem, or actually override a method in the gem to let the browser know if I'm currently logged in. Just so you can kind of see it work. Or I got to shut it down. Bring it back. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I totally forgot to show you this part. I just wanted to throw here so you can see that. Actually, you can't see it because there's so much data there. This options gets the controller and the params. So how do we usually tell if someone's logged in a common Rails application? I think I might have to send that one. I can't remember. If I'll say return nil if user nil. Otherwise, return a user ID of, and it doesn't even matter. Well, it'll be the username or the user ID or something, and then we can pass in some more user information. Now would be user.email, whatever. Now, I don't have device plugged in. I actually have, when someone logs in, I'm just recording their name and session. So I'm going to do that. Name equals John. Okay. Okay. So the method got called when I logged in. Pusher, Pakta, whatever you're using. it'll return you an object that tells you how many people are logged in and who they are. Anything that I return that identifies that user will be stored by Fox. And you can see the oversubscribed channel presence online. So let's open up another browser, say Safari. Log in. See, immediately, this thing pops up. Now I've got 2 members. And I've got both their names and all their information. So this is how you would populate the members box, so you know who's logged in. Cool. The way we use this, and it's funny how this, we use it in a couple ways. So we have an application that lets students apply to school. So if a student logs in to start the application process, we note it. If a rep wants to see all of the students that are actually currently online doing something, they can just do a quick search and say, I want all the students that are online, and it'll give them that list of students. If you look at the students' details, you can see a little note saying they're online or not. If reps sign in, then our chat boxes are populated with a message saying, your rep is ready for you. If the rep closes their browser, it says, no one's available, please enter your message, respond back later. So it's a lot of ways of using this information to your benefit. This information, like whenever this event happens, you can actually query the Paxa or Pusher service. There's a REST API. It's kind of complicated to get a message out because it's over open HTTP or HTTPS, but you have to encrypt your message in like 3 different ways before it'll respond to you. The gym that I'm using does that for me, so I'm able to query it and get that list of users for that or any channel. Any questions on this? This is cool. Oh yeah, yeah. What was it? Main index. The bottom, I think. Where did I put that thing? Here it is. So these 2 things working in conjunction. When the browser subscribes to the presence channel, it has to provide a function that says, do this whenever the people log in do something different. In a lot of cases, we actually tell it to do nothing because maybe that information is not relevant to that user, but it's relevant to us who are watching that user. Maybe a common way to do this is we'd say the channel name would be presence/online- and then the user ID. So only that student would get that presence channel. Only they would be on it if they're online. So then if we query and say, is this user online, we know. And when the browser first logs into them with this help, that when it makes that call to the off, it is returning this function. If you're logged in, it'll return it, otherwise it'll return it. So.
Whatever standard supports the Websockets that you're using, it's supported by all browsers.
The newer browsers, yeah. I don't quote me on this. I think there was something set up where older browsers would switch to a polling. I've never really looked at the code, but today, like if you use Chrome, Safari, IE, Firefox, they all support Websockets. support it equally. I mean, like you get the same behaviors out of any browser. And we have users using all different sorts of browsers, and this basic stuff works. Yeah. Sure. Mm-hmm.
So what's the process serving?
Sure. So, well, if it helps, my Rails application is doing nothing different. Rails is still operating under the constraints of that request response. So Poxa is running on a different server. Now we run it on the same server. You can do that without a problem. But in this case, I'm running it on this server, and this server operates as an intermediary. So the browser is going to point to this thing. Rails application is pointing to this thing, and then the Rails now is able, if it posts something to this server, it's going to go to the user. So in a way, like I call this WebSockets in Rails. I'm not actually putting WebSockets in Rails. I'm making it so it's possible, like I'm working around it.
So the only time that you actually go back to the browser is through some action in Rails. So whether that's a job,
yep.
Somebody else did it,
yes. And it's I'd say mostly, but it's practically always from the Rails server over. Now you can open up clients from anywhere. So you can actually, if you wanted, you could use the pusher Poxa technology to have communication both ways. Like you could set up two servers that just talk over these WebSockets. It doesn't have to be a browser, but this just is the most practical use of it. There are clients, by the way, for every technology: .NET, Java, Python. You can use this anywhere you want.
Where did you get it?
I was searching for open source solutions. Now, I was hesitant to use Poxa because I thought at the time that, like when they would have they have pay levels. There's like a free version, and then if you want more than 20 users, or I'm just making up a number, I can't remember what number it is. But then if you have that many users, you need to pay them that much, or if you wanted 50. And I thought at the time that that's pretty limited. Only 50 users can be on at the same time. But it's not really. I mean, after using this for months, I think I would, if I could go back in time, I might be paying for Pusher. Because Poxa, we had to learn, how to host it. There was a lot of pain involved there.
So you're using Poxa instead of Pusher?
The Pusher provided the spec, and the libraries and everything on how to do it. And then a few people, and it's not just Poxa, there's a Ruby implementation too. I think there's implementation for lots of technology where people take Pusher's spec and then they implement it themselves. I went with the with Poxa because I don't want to sound biased, but we were picking between Ruby and an Erlang, Erlang solution. And if I'm dealing with real-time things, I'm not going to use Ruby. I mean, it's just, I just don't trust it yet. It might work out well, but Elixir, which compiles to Erlang, and the few Erlang services I've used, they never fail. And no. Oh yeah, so that was Docker. Let me show that. I showed this in December, but it's Poxa. Here's my Docker file. Think of it like this: let's say that you were scripting from you're writing a shell script to set up that Erlang and Elixir and Poxa on a server. You would execute these things. So when I set up that Poxa server, I ran this command. It actually ran these and set up the server and then it executed it. So I didn't actually do any. There's no Elixir programming. I did have to make a few pull requests. I mean, there was I've helped fix a couple bugs because I've used it so much, but you don't have to even know how this works.
Or it's just been broken.
Yeah. Yeah.
Apple used to be written in
Well, not Ruby's my favorite.
Can you go back to that previous page? That's
Yeah.
so when those connections
You mean this?
Yep.
So if someone leaves the browser, which I'll do, so you can see it. I think I had another browser open. I think this thing even, yeah, it even reports the seconds that it was running. This is like a history. It's not a live snapshot of the current state. It just lets you see how things have happened. So. Right. Now you can query the server for that.
So does and it has to be like the browser closes, just needs the page.
If they, yeah, they. If, whenever you leave the page, and you closing the browser is one way to do that. Going to another page is. So we do have that case of if you go to a new page, you'll temporarily look like you're offline when you're in that transition when it's loading the new page. Yeah. Yeah. So while it's loading the HTML, loading the images, you're offline. Then that ready, you know, jQuery says, hey, it's ready, execute this. Then it looks like you're back online.
So in that instance, where they're downloading the second report and they leave that page, then there has to be some sort of
well, I don't, in that case, I don't know. Like in our case, we don't have that problem because they never leave the page. They just say, I want it, makes an AJAX call, it starts the report building. Now, in that case, I don't know. Like I guess you're saying, like if you click on a page and it takes like 40 seconds to load, I don't know the point at which the browser says, oh yeah.
somebody can go circle that
Yeah. Well, if you implement the well, there's that what do they call it? The desktop notifications. Like if you log into Slack, I think, or Google Hangouts or whatever, you have to. The browser has to give permissions. I think if you hook to that, technically, you kind of could do it. Now, if they leave the site, you can't do anything. But, yeah. Yeah. So I talk, and I'm always horrible at timing these things. I don't think we have enough time to actually do the chat, but at least I hope you see the way that you could. This has opened up at least the opportunity for you to know how to post from your server back to the browser in real time. Just one more thing, just so you know about this, but what's to stop me from going to a site that uses this and then typing this statement in the console and hitting enter? Nothing. And if I did that, the way it's set up right now, I would actually be subscribed. I could even write in my console, I could make up a new function saying, you know, do this or that or whatever, hit enter, and now I'm subscribed to that thing. So this may look like it's not very secure. And in some ways it's not. Like I wouldn't be passing private information this way. But if you wanted, all you have to do is put a private dash in front of your channel name. By doing that, you'll activate this authorization for the channel. Let me push both of these and you'll see. Also, let me go ahead and put this out just so you can see. Hey, look here. Okay, so you can see I subscribe to Presence Online and Private Chat. You'll see two separate calls to the off, one for both channels. And you can differentiate them. I printed out the params. So when it calls off, it'll pass you all the information about that channel, including the name. So in that case where I wanted to lock down a channel to only be available for that user, I actually named the channel, like in this case it'd be chat dash and then the user's ID. And then in the authorization code, I parse the ID off the channel name and I check, is this that user? And if it's not that user, I say you don't have access to this channel. So that's your way of locking it down. So any other questions? So give it a try. It's, this is the kind of stuff that I thought I had to leave Ruby and go to Node for. You know. Seriously, like this is if you weren't, I'd like to know of another way of doing this. If you in Ruby, this is not the way to do it. So, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know this technology on this, but I've heard that Rack is very bad at, right now at least, at Websockets or opening that's connected to something. So I think Rails 5 has some new streaming features. Maybe that might help with that. But I don't even know. I guess it's like Ruby and Rails and Sinatra. These are great at what they do, that request response, but they're just, I don't think they're good at this. So this opens it up so we can stay in Ruby and Rails, but we can still do all the fancy stuff that some of the newer technologies are doing. So if there are no other questions, that's all I have. If you have any questions later, just ping me online or something, and we can talk.